Welcome back to the show. So, Alan, as the creator of the character, how do you feel about this?
Sorry, what?
I know it can be an awkward question with the man sitting right next to you, but I mean, how do you feel about him in the role of Casey? Does he look the part to you?
He looks exactly like I always imagined Casey to be. It's uncanny.
Thank you. That means so much to me. I'm a huge fan of your books.
So, what's the problem, Alan? Because on more than one occasion, you voiced your reservations about the adaptations.
It's not that. They're their own thing. They've gone with choices that are different from mine. I feel protective about my stories, and these adaptations... I don't know. I guess I just wish I could have been more involved in making them.
Well, in that case, you won't have seen this either. We have a clip from the new film, Murder Case Casey. Should we roll it, or do you want to say something first, Sam?
Nah, just roll it.
Never have I ever experienced a more brilliant but convoluted and confusing stories in any video game. These games got like two timelines that not only do they loop around, they're both taking place in different places that both affect each other. If that isn't confusing enough, we've got multiple actors playing multiple different characters, and only some of those are real, as half of the story is literally made up story inside of the game that has versions of the characters that ain't real, and even those are mixed in between the real world and the world of the story. I don't know if that sentence made any sense, but that's kind of the point of the whole situation here. After that fucking cliffhanger of an ending, the game breaks the fourth wall, and to get the true ending, you need to play the game on New Game Plus. As the characters say, the game's story isn't exactly a loop. It's a spiral that loops around, but there is still an end to it somewhere, and every loop is slightly different. As a player, when you start the new game, you already know the story and what happens in it, so the replay is that different kind of loop, and because of the loop around is different, it doesn't connect to the former loop, so thus as spiral. That was a very complicated way of saying you gotta play the game twice. Before we really get into the video, note that this game is fucking huge. There is so much content to discuss that I won't be able to cover all of it here today, unfortunately, and due to the game being a confusing mix of shit, I had a hard time coming up with a proper structure to this video, so let's talk about... Games rarely use live-action cutscenes, and for me, they tend to take me away from the world and break my immersion, but I'm stupid, and even pre-rendered cutscenes do that to me. I always prefer in-game cutscenes and keeping the game flowing from scene to scene as much as possible. Alan Wake does both, but goes even further and mixes the two, and it looks gorgeous. So many games nowadays focus too much on pure graphics that we lose the possibility for artists to really shine. Having a realistic look for your game makes sense for games like Red Dead or The Last of Us, where it supports the story and the setting. Past Remedy games have all had great visuals, but Alan Wake 2 is by far the best. What really makes that art style pop is the lighting, a super important part of not only the gameplay, but the story as well. When you first visit Cauldron Lake at the very beginning, it's daytime, and the forest looks peaceful, but when you return later that day and it's dusk and the little amount of light the sun gives finally goes out as you descend deeper into the forest, knowing there is something horrible waiting for you. That shit was fucking tense. Brilliant. Not only are the visuals amazing, but so is the acting and directing. No wonder the game won so many awards for that. With so many returning actors from previous Remedy titles, also a ton of characters have the same names just to confuse you, and also we see some actual returning characters from not only Alan Wake 1, but also Remedy's previous game, Control. There was even a whole ass Alan Wake DLC in Control, which I never played, so I don't know too much about that, except the part about some multiverse theory. That particular part doesn't come up in this game, thank God, because the game is already so layered that I'm afraid of how I'm going to do any kind of summarization in this video about the story, but I guess it's time to talk about that. I shortly talked about the plot in the beginning and mentioned the literal layers this game has. It would have been so easy to mess up the pacing with a story like this, but they absolutely nailed it. There is so many plot points, characters, agendas, and twists that keeping track of them did get pretty difficult at times, but thank God for the mind plays. An ability that our other protagonist, Saga, has, where the game takes you literally into her mind to recap vital moments and connect events, characters, and their motivations on a literal mind map. This is mostly optional, but for me it came in super handy. Alan's mind place is called the writer's room, and instead of recapping moments, he creates them. With just the press of a button, you're able to insert made-up plot events to alter a scenery, to traverse areas or solve puzzles and reveal more of the story. How this is possible is due to Alan's gameplay sections taking place in the Dark Place, a sort of dream world where the book Alan is writing can alter reality. But due to the dark presence leaking into the real world, Alan's writing affects it as well, and thus the connection to Saga and the events in her story. We switch in between the two protagonists at first, then surprisingly the game lets you play either one's story in an order of your choosing, until the very last few chapters, that is. Even if the game is full of content and rapid story, the brilliance of that aforementioned pacing is what the legend himself, Hayao Miyazaki, called Ma, or the silence between the clap of your hands. So many of his stories focus on that exactly, giving the viewer time to breathe and take in the world they are witnessing. Even if Alan Wake is mostly, it does give us this too. This particular section came when we visit Watery, a small town in Washington founded by Finnish immigrants, and thus is a perfect mix of modern American and Finnish culture. The pier where I got this clip from is right outside a sauna, a very familiar sight to someone like me. Speaking of, the representation of the Finnish culture is brilliant and uses both subtle and very in-your-face type of ways to show it. The cult and the accordance to nature is heavily similar to Finnish folklore, and also that calm evening in a lake house sauna with the boys whilst the old janitor sings karaoke is on point. Also the straight up Finnish characters like the Koskela brothers, who are more of that in-your-face comedy style, making jokes about beer and awkward social situations and owning a coffee company, as coffee too is a super important part of the culture for some reason. I can't explain why, but it was immensely satisfying when I got to play this game on a cool spring Saturday morning, sitting down with a cup of coffee, getting to experience something this high quality, recognizing a part of the subtle culture that the calm Finland has, and excellently portraying it on screen. The Koskela brothers weren't the only great characters in the game, even if this game is more about the plot and telling an interesting mystery than instead of having super deep characters. It doesn't mean that these characters weren't excellent. Combination of superb writing and acting brings out these unique and interesting personalities, and I will remember these faces for a long time. I don't think there was a single character I didn't end up liking. It is even more impressive considering that we get such short times with some of these people, but even then I cared about them and was sad to see the horrible things happening to them later on. The balance between comedy and a surprisingly violent and dark story caught me off guard, but mostly in a good way. The game straight from the get-go in the intro establishes the tone being more horror than the first game. It's funny to think that in the span of a few minutes in-game, we can go from watching a beer commercial making dick jokes to then seeing the literal devil killing tens or even hundreds of people and having the walls and ceilings painted with blood. I like that most of the violence shown is the aftermath of it. So many stories tend to focus too much on that act of violence instead of the real hurtful part, which is what we see afterwards. It is not only more tolerable and not relying on gore or shock to disturb you, it also gives room for the player's imagination to piece together what happened. That piecing together part has to be my favorite aspect that always hooks me in detective mysteries that no other genre rarely does. Using the mystery to make the viewer feel like a part of the story by giving hints and dripping more and more information to slowly fill the bucket. The fact that there is even a 20-minute short film that plays in a movie theater in the background that is completely optional and missable is the most Remedy thing ever. It even has vital plot points that reveal more of the story. All of the manuscripts Radio calls, songs, and TV commercials are optional, but every single one has a purpose.
In the sauna, using your beer can to hide your pippeli from wandering eyes. Alma Beer, your finished drinking adventure starts here.
I love when games that have optional story for the players that want to learn more, be that in form like text, audio, or optional cutscenes even. Anything goes. And this tends to reward the ones who care and not bother those who don't. I already talked about the presentation, but only the visual part. And to me, the most surprising part was...
Hello, Cauldron Lake! Great to see so many federal agents here tonight. Prepare to experience a soul-searing, mind-frying act of black magic and sorcery! This song goes out to our favorite tortured writer. Let these sweet tunes guide you out of the darkness.
I showed the game, talked about the themes and the story around each song that we needed, and provided poetry that I had written as a starting point for the lyrics. What I really wanted, that the song camp is a songmaker's paradise. The only rule that we had was the lyrics need to be about the story.
I am shocked that this game received 0 awards in this category. Of course, awards are a controversial topic about critiquing a game's quality. The level of quality extends to every aspect of the soundtrack. The instrumental OST is simple yet effective, but the fucking lyrical tracks, god damn. So many high quality artists and so many bangers.
Start from the second round. We gotta gather a bunch of people in a studio or a house or whatever, and then we form groups, and then they have like the briefs, like this is what we're looking for.
Every single thing on those songs that we did is based on those poems and those visuals that we saw. So I can't see a tighter relationship of a song and a game. You know, at least we haven't done anything like this before.
The Finnish band Poets of the Fall are very familiar with Remedy, as their song A Late Goodbye was a huge part of Max Payne 2, and now the band has revamped themselves as the Old Gods of Asgard, a band in the story of Alan Wake 2 with very vital characters related to Saga. The Poet and the Muse is a perfect sequel to A Late Goodbye and has been on repeat on my Spotify.
There are these highlights in all of these game projects. Really, this whole thing, working with these artists.
There's an old town road with mystery of Tom the poet and his muse, and a magic lake which gave a life to the words the poet
I'm sure that I will treasure the memory of the whole experience.
Anger's Remorse is a lovely and tragic but bittersweet lyrical story. The lyrics are even heartbreaking, but still like they have a hopeful meaning behind them. If you know the outcome, what happens in the game, then you know what I mean.
You will find in there the peace you miss in the man. You carry light by fire when our shame becomes a pale horse. The stories harboring a liar, but you're the seer can break the curse. For in the twilight of my...
And then of course probably the most popular one, Herald of Darkness.
From what I've gathered, you grew up nice and sheltered with mama's pretty stories and your own made-up fury. And mama gave me a magic clicker. Well, yes, I think it's true and fair to say.
Come on in and listen, lost words.
And all almost 14-minute long, musical rock, jazz and ballad and orchestral all mixed together to create this absolute unit of a song. The full in-game version is over 30 minutes long, of unique music made for the scene it plays in. Oh yeah, this musical here is even a scene in the game itself. I was not expecting this at all and it feels so weird, but I love it just for that. You never see this type of shit in games and especially the so-called AAA market, but Alan Wake 2 is above its peers in so many ways.
And the winner is, and the award goes to Alan Wake 2. Alan Wake 2!
I'll show you the herald of darkness, lost in the never-ending night.
I remember when I talked about Max Payne in one of my videos, and then I talked about Remedy being a studio that heavily relies on inspiration from other content, like Alan Wake does. It takes so many elements from other movies, other games, and especially now in Alan Wake 2, theater. We have an actual musical cutscene and performance in the game. Couldn't it be more obvious? The way the characters exist in the story is very theater to me, as well. I personally just happen to recognize some of the actors, and because they play so many different characters, and some people do voiceovers for certain versions of these characters, so they have the same face but a different voice, and they talk to each other, it just kind of gives this, we are watching actual real people in a scene. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I still enjoy it. Maybe it takes away from the immersion, but it also in a story like this that uses that catalyst of mixing fourth wall breaks with the story. I guess it enhances the immersion. Martti Suosalo, who plays Ahti, or Ahti, in this game, and Control, and other Remedy title, he's a super mysterious character with the name of a literal Finnish folklore god, and the way he spits wisdom, and seems like he knows everything about the characters and the story, and always suddenly appears in the most random places, makes him seem like this omnipotent being, which never gets explained. He has a song of his own here too, just like in Control. Last time it was a tango, but now it's called Schlager. I don't know how to pronounce that, or if that's even an actual word. The translation from the Finnish word iskelmä is an adult pop song. It's not a proper genre in itself, but just often a karaoke vibe slow tempo song of mixed pop and rock. A proper part of the Finnish culture that this game is already full of. He also sings it in Finnish, as you can hear. And also, unironically, it's probably even supposed to make fun of the genre, but it's still a fucking banger. Even, you know, making fun of that genre is part of that genre, so it's very common.
Kuin painajainen hän luoksesi saapuu, hänet verhot tuon varjojen kaapuun. Monta tarinaa hänestä kerrotaan, häntä pakoon et pääsessä milloinkaan.
Okay, so not only is the music good, the way they use the in-universe band as a story element, and not only as a gimmick, is a standout for me. Near the end of the game, when Saga, with the help of her friends and family, has to finally face the big bad guy and end them once and for all. We have one of the most hype-ass scenes in recent memory. Running through the forest while listening to the ramble of Odin and Thor on the radio whilst they prepare the stage for the upcoming fight.
Bro, tree! Tree! What tree? There's no tree in the side! Who the fuck put the tree in the middle of the road? We're not on a road!
No, really, they set up a literal stage to play music. And as you arrive, you see the moon up in the night sky, lighting the beach with the old gods of Asgard gearing up for...
Just like old times, right, bro? Fighting the forces of darkness with heavy metal!
I am really hopeful for the future of this series, as even if Alan Wake 3 isn't yet confirmed, it is expected. Not only was this game a critical success, the potential for a sequel story is left open enough to make me want more. I'm not exaggerating when I say that Alan Wake 2 is an artistic masterpiece. The art direction is a sight to behold, the music goes hard, and the story kept me hooked for the whole pretty long 20-hour runtime. There is so many details and bonus content besides the main story that I will be going through all of it for a long time after finishing the game. It took 13 years for Remedy to come up with a sequel to the original, and the way they revamped the series makes me think it's probably gonna be a while until we see a next title in the series. I doubt they're gonna make a story DLC. Even when the first one and even Control received ones, they already added a completely new ending in the New Game Plus update, so I believe the version we have here is the complete experience. Exactly the perfect word to describe this game, considering all the bullshit surrounding the industry. Alan Wake 2 feels complete.